If you'd like your BSL shader settings to go from this to this, then this is the right video for you. Hello everyone and welcome back to another BSL shader settings video. BSL has updated quite a bit since my first shader settings video. So today I will be going over my shader settings once again. And just a little disclaimer, this is not a how to install shader settings. There are a plethora of YouTube videos showing you how to install shaders and I highly recommend watching those first. Along with that, most of BSL shader settings are optional, so feel free to tweak and change them to your own preference and liking. With all that being said, let's get into the video. The first thing you want to do is go to your game menu, click options, then video settings, and it will open up a bigger menu with a bunch of different settings. We won't be focusing on anything today as these are your general game settings. My Minecraft game is 26.1.2 and I'm using whatever the latest version of Fabric is. And if you're also using Fabric, you're most likely using Sodium and Iris for your shader settings. Down in the bottom left, you will click Shader Packs and it will open up your Shader Packs menu. I have a couple of different BSL packs in here for the purpose of this video, but when you first install BSL, it'll just say whatever the BSL default name is. You can rename it however you want. All that matters is you click on which pack you want to edit. In this case, I will be editing the default BSL pack. From here, you will click Shader Pack Settings and it will open up the shader pack configuration menu where we will be making all of the adjustments and changes to our shaders. The first setting that I'm going to change is lighting. I leave real-time shadows on, shadow map quality is set to medium, shadow filtering is on, shadow distance is 256, and colored shadow is also on. From here, I will go into more shadow config settings, and all I do is turn off entity shadow. Make sure to hit apply after you adjust your settings. Going back to the main lighting settings, I leave ambient occlusion on, multicolored block light is off, desaturation on, dynamic hand light is set to hands only. In ambient occlusion, I leave the AO method to modern, I set the AO strength to 1.50, and the vanilla AO strength to 0.75. Colored block light config is default, desaturation factor is set to low, and half Lambert is also off. Next, we'll go into the material settings. These main settings are all set to default, and the only settings that I will be making changes to are in the specular and reflections and emissive. In specular and reflections, I turn off rain reflection and I set the puddle amount to very low. Then, in emissive, I turn it off. Everything else is set to default since I already have emissive off. Next up is the environment settings. Before we get into some of these options, I will say now that light shafts is optional. Sometimes I'll turn this on when I'm taking thumbnails, but for the purpose of this video, I will just leave it off. Everything else here is set to default. Then we'll go into the cloud settings. I turn this to vanilla completely. The reason I do this is because I use the Better Clouds mods. I personally like those a lot better, and you can obviously make your own adjustments to your liking. Then we'll go into the fog settings. From here, I set the overworld fog density to 0, the end density to 0, height fog is off, far vanilla fog is set to full, interior fog fix is set to off, nether density is set to 0, I don't touch any settings in the more fog density and height fog density. In far vanilla fog style is set to spherical, vanilla cloud fog is set to reduced, vanilla density is set to 0.50. In the sky settings, I set the day density to 0.55. Everything else up here is set to default. In the settings below, the only thing that I change is turning off sky ground. Now we will go into Skybox. I personally keep the Aurora on to full. I set the sun intensity to 0.50. The sun and moon shape is squared and the sun and moon size is 0.75. In the water settings, water texture mode is set to tinted vanilla. Water alpha mode is also set to vanilla. Normals are set to Perlin. Parallax is on. Watercolored shadows are off. Water caustics are off. Detail is set to 25%, sharpness is set to medium, bumpiness is set to 0.50, speed is set to 0.75, water fog is set to underwater only, water fog density is set to 0.25, caustics strength is set to 1.0, and pixel lock is off. Lastly, we will go into the animation settings. I set the animation strength to 0.75, the animation speed to 0.50, World time animation is off. Grass, plants, leaves, water, and fire are set to on. Crops, tall plants, vines, lava, and lantern are off. That is all for the environment settings. Now we will go into camera settings. Depth of field I have set off, but when I'm taking thumbnails, I do turn this on. Motion blur is off. Bloom radius is set to high. Bloom contrast is set to 1.0. Lens flare is on. Vignette is off. Chromatic aberration is set to off. Motion blur strength is set to 0.25. Bloom strength is set to 0.25. Dirty lens is off. Lens flare strength is 0.50. Vignette strength is set to 0.1. And underwater distortion is on. That is all for the camera settings. Going into color, again, you are good to just stop here and enjoy your BSL shader settings, but if you want to go a bit more in depth, these are what I change. We'll first go into lighting color. Light morning and ambient morning are set to default. So instead, we will go into light day. From here, I put red to 255. Blue is set to 252. Green is set to 244. And the intensity is set to 0.90. In ambient day, red is set to 228, blue is set to 255, green is set to 236, and the intensity is set to 0.70. Now we'll go into light evening. Red is set to 255, blue is set to 100, green is set to 160, and the intensity is set to 0.90. Ambient evening, light night, ambient night, and minimum light are all defaults, so we will not be going into those settings. Going back to the main color settings menu, the only other setting that I change is in the watercolor settings, which again is up to you and all for your preference. I personally like to make the watercolor a bit brighter. So in this case, red is set to 64, blue is to 55, alpha is 0.70, vanilla intensity is 0.60, green is 172, intensity is set to 0.70, fog intensity is set to 0.80, and vanilla alpha curve is set to 0.65. That is all for the color settings menu. Last but not least is color grading and tone map. From here, exposure is left at 0.0, auto exposure is off, classic exposure is off, more exposure config settings are set to default, so I won't be going over those. Color grading is on, and before I get into color grading config settings, we will change some of the settings below. Tone map lower curve is set to 1.1, tone map upper curve is set to 1.1, tone map white curve is set to 2.0, and tone map white path is set to 1.0. Saturation is set to 1.05, and vibrance is set to 1.05. Now we will go into the color grading config settings. The red channel, blue channel, and tint are set to default. The only settings that I will be making changes to are in the green channel. From here, all I do is set the green to green value to 252, and I set the green strength value to 0.90. Minimal green value is set to 0, and green curve value is set to 1.0. These settings are optional. I personally love a more warmer tone to Minecraft. Anti-aliasing and extras I do not touch, so I will not be going over those. And that is pretty much it for all of my BSL shader settings. And of course, here is a side-by-side comparison of the default BSL shader settings and my BSL shader settings. Do let me know in the comments if you end up using my shader settings and how you like it. And I hope it provided a better understanding of how I got my game to look like this. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a great time zone, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!